Yeah, it was a great throw. Very strong throw.
And there was no one there to catch it?
There was just no one there.
There's nobody there.
I mean, that's pretty funny. Like, you don't see this.
Yeah, so I kicked a helmet. I didn't throw a fit. Nobody knew about it. I just kicked a helmet. I walked into the dugout and kicked a helmet. It's not like anybody saw. It was fine.
I saw.
You gotta manage your expectations for the kids, though.
They're well managed. Trust me.
Still disappointed.
All right, start your thing.
Here we are, Abe. Cast Iron Brains, a podcast that blogged at the very start of baseball season and entitled that blog, Baseball is Life, and hasn't blogged since, just to prove the point. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I'm fine.
Lori's just fine. Tonight is Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. Happy birthday to my sister, Catherine.
Oh, look at that. Happy birthday.
I think we had Monday recordings last year and wished Duncan and Catherine happy birthdays in consecutive weeks. And Wednesday recordings, does that even make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like we managed to do it because we had a Wednesday recording tonight because of our crazy lives up here.
Or you just wished them happy birthday, even though it wasn't immediately their
Probably,
birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Catherine. She's 32.
Catherine is the goodest person, as we'll discuss.
The goodest person. Didn't record Monday because of Little League Baseball. Didn't record on Tuesday because it was the only night of the week without Little League Baseball. And so, of course, we had multiple hours of other 10 and 8-year-old bullshit to do, including swim team tryouts.
Which preceded multiple hours that you could have been preparing for a podcast.
It was too much going on.
Just saying.
Too much. Swim tryouts.
We were home earlier last night.
Both kids made the team. Great success. They'll be on the City Swordfish team, which gives us the opportunity to pay $120 per child.
Nice.
It's just what shit costs.
Join the stupid swim team. I was checking out at because like both kids passed and it's very official. Like I get a Post-it note with their first names on it. So I take the Post-it note with their first names up to the checkout counter at the swim center. And I hand it to the lady. She doesn't even look at it. She puts it directly in the trash. Like it could have said, I'm a terrorist. Call your leader and let them know I'm going to blow up the swim center. And she wouldn't know. She would have just been like, okay, credit card. That would have been. She's like, how many do you have? I was like, their names were on the official document that you just put in the trash, but it's 2. And she's like, all right, you put the card in the machine there. It's like, how much? What do you mean put the card in the machine there? What is the arrangement here? I know she's busy and she's been doing this all day, but Jesus Christ, lady, tell me at least what I'm buying. $240 damn later. Good stuff, though. The kids were very pleased with themselves. It's a very intense tryout. You have to get in the pool and swim to the other end of the pool on your belly and then swim back on your back. And if you don't drown or touch the bottom, you're on the team.
There's no time limits as long as they're not drowning?
I heard that it was like 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to do it. But
that's not easy.
I could do it in 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pretty
That's
long
a long time.
It's not Michael Phelps or that Katie
No, they just want to make
stuff.
sure that they're not
an obvious danger to themselves.
And also, like, they can't teach them how to swim. They need to just know how to swim.
Okay. They need to come prepared. Were there any close calls? Like, oh boy, that kid's going to drown. He's not quite ready.
I mean, I'm sure there are. Like when we got there was one kid, and I overheard the lifeguard / assistant swim coaches talking amongst themselves about how they thought for a second they were going to have to jump in there and get him, but they didn't. Also, I don't want to talk about the youts necessarily, but one of these youts at the swim tryout Now, we don't have a very wide audience here in Charlottesville, so I don't expect this to get out, but I'll keep it
in
as
Charlottesville.
anonymous as
That is our
possible.
1 week market.
That's right. The bathing suits, man, like she was wearing
It's
basically
not just the bathing
right.
suits.
It's not just the bathing
I'll
suits.
send you a picture.
But there was nothing on below the navel, basically. And this is at a city rec swim pool thing where children. I mean, I wasn't.
There are pictures of this? What am I listening to?
No.
No,
I
I'm
didn't.
sending you
Okay.
a picture of a different day.
Although I did feel like a creep because I got out my phone to text because Lori had texted me because she was worried about what was going on. And I saw I had a message, and so I'm texting on the pool deck, and I immediately felt like a creep because I'm standing behind this girl with in excess of 95% of her ass is just out. Just her whole butt is there.
Yeah.
And so I'm 8 feet behind her with my phone out, and some people are just pretending to type when they do that because they're taking a picture of the butt right in front of them there. I was not, I promise.
Just zoom into these girls that I have in this picture.
Yeah, those are a couple girls, nice college girls on the sidewalk.
That's clothes to them.
Those are going out clothes. They're ready to socialize, and their whole butts are out.
Their whole butts are out.
It's a new style.
No judgment. But also, this girl, who I did not take a picture of, but I did note to Lori the situation, because I'm the sort of upstanding wife guy who notes when he sees other women's whole butts out in public. She turns around, and some smaller percentage of her frontal region is also entirely visible. There's
wow.
I'm fully aware of her grooming habits, is the way that I will put it.
That's a lot of information. So this is
It's a lot of information.
I was feeling bad about my short shorts when I'm running. These are shorter still. They're very...
No. And they don't wear, I don't know. Part of it feels like throwback to the late 90s with the girly pop stars where they would wear the low-rise jeans and the halter top, and so there'd be a lot of...
No, but now it's high-rise, wide-leg, cropped jeans. They're
ugliest
hideous.
possible jeans possible that these girls are wearing. And then also the halter
Bras
tops.
as shirts.
So that just bra, so I can see your whole belly. I see everything going on there. Girls, not a good look. Take it from me, the 40-year-old who decides these things.
Right. It's not going to go over well, this advice.
Anyway, my kid's going to play trumpet next year, so everything's going to be okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, look forward to that noise coming out of the basement next year. That'll be good.
It won't be his chewing, at least.
No. We had pool, we had band tryouts, and we had Katie's ballet thing, which is fine. It was a busy day, so here we are tonight instead.
Yeah.
Hey, but quick update on the NBA playoffs. I believe the last time we spoke about the NBA playoffs, you predicted that the Golden State Warriors, led by Stephen Curry,
Yes.
would win the whole deal. They were summarily kicked out of the playoffs in embarrassing fashion.
Embarrassing. That's a bit strong. They tried and they failed.
Yeah, but they failed to the Lakers, right?
Right. Who then also
and then
failed.
Then the Lakers were embarrassed on their way out of the playoffs.
Right. So
My favorite LeBron thing is when he really shits the bed in playoff games. And so I got the notification on my phone one day last week. It said, LeBron with one of the greatest first halves in the history of basketball playoffs. Like LeBron scores 45 or something. I don't know what the number was, but it was a big number. And they were up 20 points or something after a half of basketball. And they were down 3-0 in the series. And I was like, they're going to lose. And then I woke up the next morning and they had lost. It was great. That's the sort of basketball fan I am.
It wasn't LeBron's fault, to be fair. He put up 40 points. But yeah.
Did he put up another 40 in the second half? No, he did not.
No. He's almost 40 years old. He's an old man who's still playing well.
Learn to pace yourself, old man. What good is an awesome first half in Game 4 of a series that you get swept in? That's what I want to know. What a bum. So what does that leave us with? What does that leave us with? It's the Nuggets.
It's the Denver Nuggets who have never won, and either Miami or Boston, likely Miami.
Right, because Miami had gone up 3-0 and then lost last night, I believe, right?
Yeah, so basically a gentleman's sweep, or maybe Boston comes back or something.
Who's the most likable team here out of the three remaining teams?
Denver, by far.
because of
Because they've never
their-
won. They got Nikolai Jokic, the Joker.
Yeah, they got
call him,
Jokic, the great Jokic out there.
Yeah, and like I said, Denver hasn't. I think this is the before the NBA and the ABA merged. Like the Nuggets are from the ABA side, kind of like the AFL, NFL with
Right.
football. And I think this is the last of the ABA teams that survived to make it to the finals. Like there's been like a bit of a drought.
Right.
And so like it's a better story. The other teams have already won before, Boston and Miami.
Miami's a good story, though, right? The 8th seed,
Yeah.
and they're sort of a shitty regular season, and then Jimmy Butler, just
Yeah.
a total try-hard maniac, turns
Yeah,
it on
he's-
when it counts.
He's one of those crazy people that people like Kobe and that Jordan guy that you're a big fan of, where they're like, oh, big asshole, and I'm going to win. And then they win.
Yeah. All right, that's our NBA coverage.
Very thorough.
Who you got?
The Golden State Warriors. What do you-
I'll write that down. Try to play. So I wonder if FanDuel will take my bet on the Golden State Warriors at this point. All right, let's talk quickly about Dianne Feinstein again, real quick. This won't take too long.
Right.
The night after we recorded, and we had talked about how she doesn't have any brains left, or like what brains she has left, or from the 90s or something, and no new stuff has come in since then.
Yeah, I was going
and
to
it's
say
not-
that the lights are on, but no one's home, but the lights are also off. Like everything is just off.
She doesn't belong doing her job anymore. And this article in Politico came out the day after we recorded last week, and it suggested my favorite sort of political conspiracy, which is it's the ones that are entirely believable.
Yes. Like the most likely scenario. Yeah.
Right. And this is by Rachel Bade, who's a reporter for Politico. She wrote a book last year about something. I can't remember what now. That's a helpful explainer on who Rachel Bade is. It turns out that the person who's been hanging out around Dianne Feinstein the last long while is Nancy Pelosi's oldest daughter. She has become her most important caretaker. She is always by her side. She was with her in California the entire time, spent apparently basically every waking minute with her. She's with her still in Washington, and that's Nancy, the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's oldest daughter. So we had discussed, like, why in the world, given that Gavin Newsom is there, and the governor of California is a Democrat, you'd obviously replace her with a Democrat were she to be removed from the Senate, just like they did for Kamala Harris with the guy whose name I can never remember, a Hispanic guy from California who's currently the junior senator. I see Abe thinking about Hispanic-sounding names, and he can't do it. Anyway, so, like, why the big mystery? Why wouldn't we just let Dianne go, where she clearly doesn't belong any longer, and let Newsom appoint someone? Now, Newsom has promised to appoint a black woman to the seat, which, of course, for me, that's perfect. As we discussed a month or so ago on the show, my whole plan for surviving the 2024 election cycle is to get Kamala Harris back in the Senate. Right. And Gavin Newsom has promised to put a black woman into Feinstein's seat if he has that opportunity, and Kamala Harris counts as that, as we've been told many times. So I don't know what the holdup is. I couldn't figure it out. Perfect fulfillment of my plan. Apparently, and here's the conspiracy part, Nancy Pelosi is deeply invested in getting Adam Schiff that Senate seat, in helping Adam Schiff become the nominee when the office comes up for its regularly scheduled election in a couple of years.
Yeah, actually next year, right, in 24.
Right.
Because I think Dianne Feinstein, her one concession in this whole process is to commit to not running for re-election. So it's like, all right, there, I'm going to do that. And so now you have between now and next year where, what do they do? Does she stick around long enough to where the race starts fresh and like all the, there's like the, Schiff is the impeachment hearings guy. Katie Porter, she's like the whiteboard member of Congress who
Right.
So there's like a lot of competing interests for that race, and so they're wondering like if you were to resign now, and the governor, as is his right, appoints somebody and appoints like a black woman, then that person will have
Adam
the
Schiff
advantage.
notably is not
Right.
a black
Yeah. So Adam
woman.
Schiff is
Right.
not that. So whomever the incumbent is will have this advantage, going forward. So like they're trying to prevent that from happening, which is kind of a weird thing because now you got to prop up a person who's not all the way there long enough just to accomplish a political goal. Like instead of just saying,
Just to hope to not even guarantee it, right? Just to
Right.
hope that Adam Schiff ends up as the nominee.
Right.
So that's the conspiracy angle here, is that the Pelosi political machine, with the help of Nancy's oldest daughter, has installed itself as Dianne Feinstein's protector and making sure that she stays in the Senate for as long as possible. And at the same time, I'm sure that there's various human and empathetic reasons for that. I'm sure it's not entirely, not
Right.
purely
Right.
crassly political, and they're protecting her legacy and all of that. But it is the sort of political. All of the political incentives line up for this conspiracy theory to basically be true, even if it's not outright like Nancy scheming over her fancy ice cream in front of her $7,000 refrigerator or whatever.
Right.
All of the incentives align such that even if she's not consciously trying to do this necessarily, it's just what's happening. And
Right.
that's the sort of conspiracy theory that I like best, because it's perfectly plausible and makes sense with everybody's various incentives.
Right. What was it? House of the Dragon. Like there was the king who was like dying of some sort of skin issue or whatever, right? Like, this whole let's exploit the frail old person for
Right.
our political purposes. It's kind of, it's not like that crazy, but it's kind of similar to the accusation anyways. You would like to think that people aren't that like politically hungry to where, I'm sure if you go back, I don't know the relationship that the Pelosi's have with the Feinstein people, but I'm sure it goes back decades, right? They're politicians in the same party,
Right.
from the same state. So I'm sure there's a pre-existing relationship. And to exploit it now by being in the innermost circle and like screening calls, because the likely scenario is that a lot of party leaders, whether it's like former president like Obama or somebody else like some like Hillary or whomever, they're probably calling like saying, hey, as gently as they can, perhaps fuck off, So like if
Right.
somebody has a political interest in not having that be the case, they could be screening calls. And I don't know if it was Politico or some other reporting that said that some Democratic like figures, like heavyweight figures, aren't able to reach the senator, and it's because they're saying, oh, that she's not available or she's a little tired or whatever. So like the worst instincts, if you believe all those things to be true, it's kind of fucked up that they're doing all of this just to prop up somebody, just to have like a negligible advantage in 2024. Because Schiff is a known brand. Like he'll do fine if she were to Feinstein were to withdraw or resign now, and some other person were to take over.
You think he would do fine in a primary contest against? I forget who the black lady in question is most likely to be. I saw something silly today about it being Oprah, which seems
yeah, that's ridiculous. Seems
unlikely.
So whomever it would be, it's not. They're not high profile because we would know them, right? Like who? What was it? That Karen Bass? She just became mayor of LA. Would she like leave immediately?
Right. That seems unlikely.
Right. So like, there's not. So the name recognition isn't going to be there unless it is Oprah. So like, is it really that big of an advantage, like the incumbent for like a year? And your main concern is Katie Porter. She's not going to get that vacancy, right? So like, you're not that far off to where you are now. Let the process play out. This is not going to be a distraction, and you can run in 24. It just seems like it's something you would see like on an HBO show or Veep or something like that. But I would like to think that people are not that single focused, like where they're like, I don't care how this looks. She needs to be in office long enough for Adam Schiff to win.
I mean, they definitely are that singularly focused. Alex Padilla, by the way, is the other senator of
I would not gonna guess that.
From California. He would become the senior senator after being put there just a few years ago. And then Barbara Lee, that was the one that I couldn't think of.
Oh.
Barbara Lee is the...
Is she all that young?
I don't know how young she is. She's not terribly young, but she's already running against Katie Porter and Adam Schiff.
Oh, so okay, so even if she's not nominated, she would be one of the candidates anyways, regardless.
Right.
Okay.
But again, I still think my plan is best. You should just put Kamala Harris there. And barring that wonderful eventuality, because he's already appointed one, he should say, look, as much fun as this is for me, appointing senators, it's not really fair. So I'm going to appoint somebody who's going to pledge not to run again in 2024, and we will let the democratic process play out. And that should make everybody happy, except for, I guess, one black lady who otherwise would just be handed
that is
the job.
true. But yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. If they have them commit to being a caretaker kind of role, where they're just there to just the last 18 months of the term and then leave.
And Adam Schiff's a real fucking piece of work too, by the way. I thought he was fine in the impeachment things. He was, anytime I saw him on television.
You thought he was wonderful in the impeachment.
Yeah, I thought that at times he was spectacular during the impeachment. And then he would go on television on CNN or MSNBC or even on the Sunday shows and make ludicrous claims about the intelligence that he's seen that definitively ties Trump to Russia,
right,
and then never produce any of it at any point. So he was bad on that stuff, among the worst, actually, on that stuff. All right, 3 weeks ago now, we didn't talk about this on the show. Oakland A's broadcaster Glenn Kuiper, Kuiper. Honestly.
That's what we're talking about tonight.
It's we're not exactly talking about this. It's going to be a segue to another similar conversation, but we are going to talk about it to some extent. We didn't talk about it 3 weeks ago, but 3 weeks ago he had gone on a visit while they were in. The team was in Kansas City.
Kansas City, yeah.
Yeah, Kansas City, where the Negro League Hall of Fame is, or the Negro League Baseball Museum is, and while there, the broadcasting crew got to get a tour of the place, right? He was excited about that. He wanted to talk about it in his pregame show. And so I'm going to play a clip of this guy. His name is Glenn Kuiper, and he's sitting there with his buddy Dallas Braden about to call a game, and he says the following. Be warned about your delicate sensibilities here, audience out there. It's an official trigger warning from CIB.
We had a phenomenal day today. Negro League Museum and Arthur Bryant's Barbecue.
I'm going to let that play again.
We had a phenomenal day today. Negro League Museum and Arthur Bryant's Barbecue.
By the way, I know this is the audio podcast, but
the other guy,
the video is amazing. The thumbs that he's doing, like just the face that he's making, like this is all wholesome, and just the word that comes out just undoes it. But like he,
for what it's worth, in the longer clip, nobody reacts.
Yeah,
in the
that's
moment.
the other thing.
That's what the first thing I said to you was how little anyone reacted.
Right.
I think it's because
whoops.
You can choose to hear this as an obvious accidental slip of the tongue. Like,
it's still a whoops.
The first time that I heard it, I heard him. I hear the long E at the start of that word, and then he sort of swallows the rest of the word almost. And so instead of it, like it's almost like he's trying to say Negro League. Like it's like he sort of does this thing where he says Negro League, like it's Negro League Museum, but it's because his tongue gets in the way or something. It sounds like he's trying to the
professional
mistake,
talker.
Right. The mistake instead would be Negro League, which is like, which again, if you want to hear it that way, I think you can hear the long E in the very beginning of it. But because of the way the word ends, where it sounds like there's an R happening somewhere in there, which again, maybe I'll slow it down when I play it back here and really give it some space to breathe. But I think it's pretty clear, at least to my upon first hearing it, I both understand why people heard him say the bad thing,
Right.
but it's also pretty clear to me that he didn't intend to say the bad thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that last point is so obvious. That's what I am kind of just laughing at this, because it's like such a terrible example of like somebody saying the bad word in the bad way that everybody's concerned about, right? This was a gleeful person doing the thumbs thing, and the first, I don't know, 30 times I heard it one way, and then the next 20 times because I have listened to this quite a bit of time, I did not realize that. I was like, there's no way he was trying. I mean, I know he was trying to say Negro League, but I was like, I just don't know how you go from that to the other. But like, you're right. The more you listen to it, it's like he didn't let it breathe. He just kind of said both things in very quick succession.
Right, because he's trying to recount his day.
Right,
He's trying to hit the as he's counting with his thumb and his fingers. He's like trying to go, this one awesome thing, this other awesome thing, this other. So when you're doing that, it's like, Negro League Museum. Like, whoa, what did I say?
Yeah, but he didn't. Whoa, what I say?
That's the
Right,
thing.
because you don't even notice when you. I think that when you're like in that. You're on fucking television, like you're just trying to do, and it doesn't even occur to you that your brain could have done that to you, right? He's been sabotaged by his brain and lips in a way.
Right.
All right. So anyway, we didn't talk about it then. He was immediately suspended.
Right.
And they were going to investigate further, which to me was pretty ludicrous, but fine. Enough people thought that he said the bad word that to me it made sense. Okay. Give the guy a week off.
Right.
Let him make his abject apologies, which he certainly did, and then he'll come back. This isn't like I forget who it was. Was it Tom Brenneman? Somebody was caught on a hot mic in a baseball thing recently making a gay joke or something.
Oh, yeah.
Calling somebody a faggot or something.
Yeah.
The fag capitals of the world. Reds Live, the pregame show presented by Ray St. Clair Roofing.
Kansas City again. Like, I think there's something about that city that
There's something in the water with
Missouri is the most racist state.
that's saying something.
You go there and your brain and lips just become racist and homophobic accidentally against you. They conspire against you. Anyway, it turns out that punishment was not sufficient, and he had been suspended for 3 weeks, and then today news drops that he has been fired permanently, removed from his position on the A's broadcast crew.
What was the language you used after internal something, like as if there were like
after a further internal investigation, and they gave us no specifics as to what was unveiled by this further internal investigation. And to me, if what happened was you discovered there is this man, there's
pattern.
Further evidence that this man has a racist heart, then you need to disclose that.
Right.
And the fact that they didn't disclose that tells me that what happened is that there's a couple of things in his HR file over the course of 20 years or whatever that are like, well, now we have the third fucking thing in the HR file, and it's the bad word, so I guess we might as well cut him loose.
Right, like, because basically it's like a different standard, even though, like, if you just took this one incident and judged it in a vacuum, he would come in the clear. Like, no rational person would think that this is, like, evidence of some malicious kind of way of thinking, right?
The awful website
He said no rational person.
.com disagrees with you, Abe.
This zombie website that still exists somehow. But like, but when you're in this kind of situation where like, well, it just looks bad and we have to kind of suspend you for a little bit and look into it. And if you're right, if they did look into something and it was some minor thing from like 12 years ago, something minor that on its own would also not be a big thing, they're like, we can't afford to swallow the release of that second story, right? Because if they say, all right, 3 weeks, he took some sensitivity training thing, all right, we're back to good, and then a Deadspin or some other outlet reveals like 12 years ago, he said, oh, I don't know about all that dancing or some ridiculous thing, and then somebody makes a connection and then you look bad.
I thought this wasn't what we were talking about.
It's not, but it's too much fun to just leave it be.
It is. You could just not share this. It's fine.
This Deadspin article. So and I'll make sure there's a link to it and the picture in particular in the show note, because Abe, you mentioned the fact, like the visual aspect of this. So there's Kuiper. He's got the thumb up, like he's doing. It looks like just a thumbs up, but we know that he's counting. And Dallas Braden, who's a big bearded weirdo who used to play baseball and made a big stink about how he was like a strange guy, and he was an enjoyable fella. Anyway, Dallas Braden is his partner, but in the freeze frame that they've chosen, he looks like he's cringing and ashamed.
Right?
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. He was appreciative. He was dapping his own chest, saying, sort of like, man, yes, felt it right here in my heart. It was a really good day. But in the freeze frame of the video, it looks like he's ashamed to be sitting next to the awful racist.
The awful racist, who, by the way,
particularly amusing to me.
Who looked very, very happy.
Right.
You're right. This is a very charitable frame that Deadspin chose. Like, you would almost think like Braden worked for Deadspin. Like, I need to be distanced from this guy, so pick the frame that makes me look like I'm disagreeing with him. Like, that's what they
but
went
the freeze frame is completely disingenuous relative to the actual the substance of the video. All right, here is from the Deadspin thing. Definitive statement, first sentence. Actually, the headline is, "Don't feel sorry for Glenn Kuiper after he got the axe for using the N-word. Despite what the ex-Oakland A's broadcaster's excuse is, that word doesn't just slip out unless you're comfortable using it." By Eric Blum. I'm not sure who Eric Blum is.
That's about all you needed to
be
read,
frank,
though.
The the tag on the photo, which we already said was not the most generous photo, is just "no sympathy for this asshat." Like, I know that Deadspin is not actual Deadspin anymore. It hasn't been for years, but like, it's such a shitty website now.
Right.
First sentence: Glenn Kuiper didn't misspeak less than 3 weeks ago during a pregame segment when detailing his trip to the Negro League's baseball museum in Kansas City. That hateful 6-letter word, which, by the way, no matter how many times I listen to it, I cannot prove that he said all 6 letters of the word.
I hear it very clearly.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. I don't hear the full 6-letter word. I hear sort of NEGRR, sort of, but whatever. That hateful 6-letter word doesn't just slip out of your mouth unless you've used it dozens of times before and it's part of your vernacular. Like Cale Gundy, who welcomes Kuiper into the category of being fired from a job in the sports world for using the N-word. So that's a reference to Cale Gundy of the Mike Gundy family tree, I believe.
Oh, he's a Gundy?
Yeah, this guy was a Gundy. He was at Oklahoma, and he was in a film study room or something with the football team. And one of his asshole players was dicking around on his iPad instead of paying attention to film study. So Cale Gundy walks over and picks up the iPad and just starts reading from what it says on the iPad. And some of the text on the iPad apparently included
Don't do that.
the N-word.
Yes.
And he
Still got to not say it.
Yeah. And he said he didn't even realize he was saying it until he had said it, was his excuse, which, like, I don't know. I don't want to relitigate the whole Cale Gundy
At that point,
situation.
you need to just say you're borderline illiterate. So, like, I'm processing the words as I'm saying the words.
Yeah.
So.
Right. But he ended up getting the axe for that. And apparently that is a similar sin to Glenn Kuiper's sin. Kuiper was given the pink slip by NBC Sports California, where he was a broadcaster for the Oakland Athletics after he uttered that racial slur on air before a May 5th game against the Royals. The fact that this entire Deadspin article is, you'll recall, one of the all-time great South Park episodes is when Randy Marsh goes on Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, yeah. People who annoy you.
Yeah, people who annoy you, and it's N-blank-G-G. ERS.
Naggers.
Right. It's naggers. But the way he does it, I think he in fact points right at the screen as he says, and like with thumbs up as he says the bad word. Like, I know it, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say it. And then he says it proudly. Probably just play the clip here.
10 seconds, Mr. Marsh.
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it.
5 seconds, Mr. Marsh.
All right, I'd like to solve the puzzle. Niggers! Huh? naggers, of course. Naggers. Right.
But he becomes in that, because this ends up being a takeoff of the Michael Richards thing, the Kramer from Seinfeld, who screamed the N-word at one of his shows when the crowd was annoying him or something. It wasn't a good look for
it wasn't
Michael
just
Richards.
The slur, like he was like
He
talking
was
about like
it was
hanging
bad.
somebody from a
Right.
tree. Like it was like a very involved joke.
It was the use mentioned distinction did not come into effect for the Michael Richards stand-up bit in the way that one would think that it would here with Kuiper, regardless, in fact. But anyway, the long story short of that episode is that Randy gets super depressed walking around. He gets called by everybody that he runs into. They start calling him the nigger guy, and the amusing thing is that it's as though he is being injured by the word, right?
Yes.
And it's a clever little play on the whole thing. But this Deadspin article is just doing that to Glenn Kuiper and Cale Gundy, right? This entire article is just dedicated to pointing out, that's the guy.
Yeah.
And he will forever be tarnished with having been that guy. And they're doing it with a straight face and saying that he is an irredeemable piece of shit forever because he lets this word slip. He lets the mask fall, is the way it's usually described.
By the way, this is totally it is related, but I was just thinking as we're talking about this topic we're not supposed to talk about. If you were railroaded like in this way, like you just say something out of excitement, you mumble your words, and here you are, you get shit canned, right? Would this make you more racist, less racist, or no impact on your racism? Like, let's say you were not racist coming into it. And you got.
I don't think it would make you more racist, but I think it would make you more reactionary in general, right?
Okay.
I think in the way that 99% of people who are canceled by online mobs sort of, at least for a time, become reactionary assholes about like woke stuff.
Right.
Even if they weren't to start with. Like I can think of basically one example, and it's Mike Pesca, who was canceled by absurd reactionary mob himself. And doesn't talk about himself in that way hardly at all. When his podcast came back, he gave a couple of interviews to a couple of other podcasts about it, but even then downplayed the entire thing and said, look, and this is actually something that I've thought about a lot, about the people who stand outside of conventional wisdom on the woke stuff, on say trans issues, on certain framings of racial life in America. People who I think generally operate in good faith and have good faith critiques of certain progressive identitarian ideologies often end up online constantly defending themselves. And everything becomes about their experience of living outside of the mainstream, right? And Pesca seems to me to stand alone basically as the only one who has not fallen victim to this particular thing that I'm talking about. Like Jesse Singal is a reporter. He does a lot of work on the trans stuff, and his entire Twitter life, until he left Twitter a few months ago, I think, but his entire online persona was dedicated to defending himself against him being a transphobe. He becomes the center of the story the moment he brings up anything about anything. And that goes for any number of these so-called, I want to say anti-woke, but they're not even necessarily anti-woke. They're just sort of gently questioning the established conventional wisdom on identitarian politics. And it's this weird phenomenon where if you do that, you immediately, because you become the target of so much hate from, or not even necessarily hate, but constant attention, it ends up becoming about you. It's a very strange thing.
But, I do wonder if the reason why some people react in that way and others like a Pesca, and maybe there aren't as many examples on the Pesca side, but like it's not going to be just Pesca, right? Like there's other people who probably experienced a similar thing and they came out on the other side without it impacting how they think about things, right?
Sure.
But
Pesca's just a
but Abe was onto
high-profile
something
example.
there.
Right, but I do wonder though, like, is it just based on? Does it just come down to like how you identify in relation to the world? Like, if some people maybe their identity is forged in the experiences, like whatever happens to me, that's how I kind of constitute myself based on experience, and other people experience plays a role, but it's not the only thing. They'll read and they'll look at other experiences and just kind of decide and say, like, okay, this is a more objective way of seeing the world.
You're describing the difference between people who see themselves as victims and people who have sort of previously high established amount of their own personal character and therefore don't see themselves as victims. Like, I don't know what sort of a person this Kuiper fella is. My guess is that he won't become racist because of this, if he's in fact not racist to start with, but will be sort of. He will feel himself to have been victimized in an unfair sort of way, and having had lost his career in a way that doesn't seem fair to me at all.
Let's save this episode for like next year. It'll probably be like some Oath Keepers thing. This guy.
Yeah. Also.
No.
What the fuck is Deadspin talking about in terms of this isn't like it must be completely unacceptable? Like, of course, it is completely unacceptable. In fact, it's so completely unacceptable that it is basically inconceivable to me and to, I think, any other good faith actor here that he did this on purpose. Right. That he let this word fly because he's a secret white supremacist and is tired of hiding behind.
It was probably written by a bot.
The politics.
Right. I mean, the thing is, like, if you were to take the intentional theory and applied it, the sequence of events would not make sense. Like, nobody would be that gleeful. Like, I don't care how racist you are. Like, if you were to take that dial of racism to the extreme, right, and you were this person, like, you would not go about it that way. You would at least recognize that the broader world does not accept this sort of thing, right? And so you wouldn't be just...
And as a public, especially as a public-facing person, like it is utterly inconceivable that someone would, on purpose, reveal themselves to be this sort of a person. Right. It is utterly inconceivable. In the same way that the blooper thing from not blooper, blooper's the
Dinger.
Braves guy,
the Dinger.
the Colorado Rockies. Mascot Dinger, when the fan was calling for Dinger and some people heard it as the N-word instead. Like, it's the same thing. Imagine that we actually live in a world where somebody can sit in the front row of a nearly empty ballpark and just scream the N-word and have nobody care. Right. It's completely inconceivable that that's the world that we live in based on everything that we know about the world that we live in.
Remember the Georgia baseball player got kicked out because he was yelling the N-word at a football player.
Oh, yeah.
Right. He was calling...
clearly not acceptable.
Right. At a Georgia football game, Justin Fields, apparently somebody yelled down to put the N-word in the game.
Right, yeah.
Because...
not just somebody, a student athlete.
A student athlete did. And then he got the boot because people were like, yeah, it was that asshole who did that. Right. That's the guy who did that, because that's actually the sort of society that we live in, not this other weird one that these people insist we do. All right. I want to segue now, talking about the sort of world that we live in, this constantly told that America is an irredeemably racist and white supremacist culture. And then I was in the car today on the way to baseball, and I heard this on the radio.
This was the scene inside a soccer stadium in the Spanish city of Valencia on Sunday night. The echoes of fans chanting mono, or monkey, in Spanish, at a single black player from Brazil who was on the field playing for the opposing team Real Madrid. His name is Vinicius Jr., and he is one of the best players in the world. For him, Sunday night's racist chants were too much. After the match, he said on Twitter that he's been a target of this type of racism since arriving in Spain 4 years ago. NPR's Rob Schmitz is in Valencia where this happened. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Ari.
Tell us more about how the player Vinicius Jr. reacted to this event.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this was not the first time that this has happened to him. After the game, Vinicius Jr. tweeted, "This wasn't the first time, nor the second, nor the third. Racism," he said, is normal in Spain's soccer league. And for his home country of Brazil, he said Spain was becoming a country of racists.
And has there been fallout in Spain?
Yeah, obviously, this was a horrible event, the latest in a string of awful acts directed at Vinicius Jr., as we've mentioned. And the fallout, not only here in Spain, has been huge, but internationally as well. We've seen sports stars throughout Europe, the U.S., and beyond rally behind Vinicius Jr., supporting him in what is obviously a very difficult ongoing situation. One of the first people to support Vinicius Jr. was his own coach, Carlo Ancelotti of Real Madrid. At a press conference following the match here in Valencia, he was asked a question about soccer, and he said, I don't want to talk about soccer. I want to talk about what just happened here. And here's what he said.
La Liga tiene un problema. Aquí no es una persona.
And Ari, he's saying here that the entire Spanish football league, known as La Liga, has a problem. He said it wasn't just one person yelling, but it was instead an entire stadium insulting a player on the basis of his race, and that this should have no place in this sport.
And how has the sport, Spanish soccer, dealt with it?
Yeah, just to show how entrenched this problem is in this league, the chief executive of La Liga, Javier Tebas, actually got into a back and forth with Vinicius Jr. on Twitter, where he scolded the player for not showing up to 2 meetings that La Liga had scheduled to talk about racist incidents. It was really a tone-deaf response, and soon after, the president of Spain's entire football federation called Tebas' behavior irresponsible. And now we're starting to see the fallout being handled by Spanish police.
Police? What role are they playing?
Well, yesterday, police made 7 arrests of people suspected of being involved in past racist attacks against Vinicius Jr. Police in Madrid have detained 4 young men for hanging an effigy of Vinicius Jr. from a bridge in Madrid in January. They were fans of Madrid's crosstown rival Atletico Madrid, and 3 others who were involved in the racist chanting here in Valencia were arrested as well. Both of these events are being treated as hate crimes by police.
You're there in Valencia. What are people?
I will stop it there. I was amused to hear that story after having read about this Kuiper thing this morning, because we have in this case in the Spain's biggest, their Premier League basically, right? La Liga is one of Europe's biggest soccer leagues. We've got soccer fans chanting "monkey" at the lone black player.
The Europeans are racist AF.
Right. Yeah, they are. Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was a league in Spain. I mean, HBO's Real Sports. It's like a sports doc thing they do once a month with Brian Gumbel. There's been at least 2 separate episodes over the years about like racial animus towards players who are black or like Arab or whatever in like Italy, in Spain, in France. Well, France not as much, but at least those 2 places and parts of Germany, although Germany seems to be better. For some reason, there are all these like leagues and like different parts of Europe where people are not only doing the monkey chant or saying monkey in their language, they're throwing bananas on the feet, like, you know, like just crazy stuff. You know, there are occasions where matches have to happen without an audience because they can't behave themselves. They can't resist the racism. Like, I just can't. Right. I have to do something, right? And so, like, they're like, okay, we can't let you even watch the game. Just watch it at home. Like, it is such a problem that they have to resort to these kind of tactics, and it's not working. I mean, now you have this latest example. It's an odd thing where, like, no matter how far along we get, you have people that are like, ooh, what would be fun if we do like a monkey chant? That would be a good idea.
Imagine that happening here.
Oh, yeah. Like in the SEC, like, you know, there's a lot of opportunity.
It's utterly inconceivable that it would happen here, right? And I don't think that's me having like rose-colored glasses or a not understanding American culture. I think that it would be the biggest thing in the history of the goddamn world.
Because no matter where you are, you have a relative to Europe, racially diverse audience. Like, except maybe at a NASCAR race. I don't know what you call those.
That
match?
Yeah.
But, like, wherever you are, there is a black guy somewhere.
Right.
So, like, you can't have the whole crowd doing it.
Yeah, that's true. And
so even if it's purely out of just not wanting to look bad, that's all it takes.
Right.
But that's what I'm suggesting is important to understand here, is that it would look awful, right?
Yeah.
You would be ashamed. Like, even racists would be ashamed because they don't like being looked at as like, except for some very vanishingly small percentage of truly virulent racists.
Right.
Yep.
They are people who harbor unfortunate views like that, keep them to themselves because of the social opprobrium that comes with expressing those sorts of views publicly.
Right. If you had like the traveling racist, like you have all these shows where they go around eating stuff in random countries, all these travel shows. If you had like a traveling racist, like you need like a environment where you can do these racist things and be comfortable enough to know that you'll be able to get away with it, right? So like a traveling
Isn't
racist...
that what Jeff Dunham's show was called?
Perhaps, but like if you had like an episode of the traveling racist and they were in Spain and they were like, I want to do these things, like they would feel comfortable. They'll find a crowd, a bunch of people in a part of the stadium, and everybody's saying whatever, and no one's gonna rat each other out. No one's gonna say that person did it.
We had Borat.
Right, Borat maybe, but yeah, if you had like a Borat type, but like if you took that same traveling racist to Auburn, for like the Iron Bowl, right? Like they would not have that same level of comfort to be outwardly racist because
maybe in a one-on-one setting where you gain someone's trust or something like
sure
that.
That's happening.
Yes,
I'm sure there's a lot of one-on-one
You can get
racism.
people to reveal the awful things that they think about other people all the time.
Yeah,
but not in the way that we imagine it's happening with this, like a Kuiper or with the Duke basketball team. There was apparently racist chants happening that never got the Duke women's team, I think.
Oh, we talked about it.
Right, yeah. Was it?
Is this
was it
what
like
we're talking about still tonight?
Was it like some Mormon school or something? Or was that a different...
out in Utah or something, yeah.
But it couldn't be corroborated, right? Like it was like they said it, but nobody else could corroborate.
Well, the girl heard it. And she seems to genuinely feel... I don't know why we don't just go listen to that episode if this is what we're doing.
No, I'm just saying it all ties together.
It could be worse.
It's a thing that happens. It's a thing that happens over and over again, and it largely they're myths. Like this is not the way that racism actually is in America. Right. It is how it is in other places. Right. Apparently, in La Liga games, if you go in Spain and you watch a soccer game, you're going to see a little bit of that there.
Yeah,
but we
we have a more sophisticated form of racism here.
All right. Ron DeSantis announced today that he's going to officially run for president. He apparently did this on Twitter with the help of Elon Musk in a Twitter Spaces thing at 6 o'clock Eastern. I was busy. I didn't get to listen in, nor have I read anything about it.
Have you ever been on one of these Twitter Space things? I don't think I've...
So I have been on Twitter Spaces because I got a notification a couple of times that my brother Jesse was hosting a Twitter Space. And I'm like, what's happening? And so I clicked the thing. And there's Jesse doing like a live podcast on the internet there.
Audio and video? Like is it...
No, just audio. Okay. So it's just the audio. He was hosting some sort of conversation among whatever, some sort of.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, I'm sure we have.
So it is for. I know you didn't see it, but the DeSantis thing was video and audio, or just audio also? Is Spaces?
I think it was just audio. I think he was just going on. So he went on at 6 o'clock. It was moderated by David Sachs, who's some sort of an investor type guy, who's buddies with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk was
6 o'clock.
Was there? Yeah, 6 Eastern, and then he was going to go on Fox
yesterday.
No, tonight. So he goes on this Twitter Spaces thing again. I don't know exactly what was said there. It seemed kind of weird that he was making his official campaign announcement on Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk, but for whatever reason, Elon has sort of been tagged into this vaguely right-wing thing that goes on online, I guess.
Tagged. He seems like he's kind of egging it on. Like he seems to be doing this by design.
He's being like fucking Roman.
Yeah, he's kind of Roman-ish.
Maybe. To suggest that he has basically any alignment with anything resembling traditional Republican values strikes me as pretty silly. He's obviously a social liberal.
But what are those even?
Right.
But
a social liberal, but so is Trump, really.
Yeah, the only thing that he's sort of aligned with them on is the woke mind virus stuff. Like he wants all of that to go away, and so he's happy to be friends with some of these Republicans now, I guess. But whatever. I don't think he's smart or interesting enough to think about enough or very much. But whatever. That's not what I'm interested in talking about. There was this article in the Times talking about how his super PAC, DeSantis' super PAC, which is called Never Back Down, and also puts stuff out about like Florida man, like they're embracing the Florida man aspect of the DeSantis candidacy.
An interesting strategy. They're kind of like memory holding.
No,
like,
that makes
forever.
sense.
Like the relationship America has with Florida is not going to
Make America Florida is one of their taglines.
Right.
It's not the campaign itself necessarily, but it is his super PAC, which works closely with him, even if they're not supposed to.
Make
And, like,
America Florida, as in if people were trying to move jobs to America, they just pull the plug on that. And not do it because they're too annoying.
I have no idea what they think it is they're accomplishing there. I think it is one of the worst taglines I've ever heard. Like, make America Florida is a threat.
Right, yes.
And it will always. And I don't think that that's just my. Like, I obviously hate Florida because of football and various other reasons. But also Florida.
It's too flat.
What are we talking about? Make America Florida. You're out of your goddamn mind.
Right.
That does not appeal to most people.
Right, but I guess he's thinking like I got to lean in, because inevitably they're going to make the Florida jokes, that Bugs Bunny thing, and it's been a punchline for like how long? Like, I mean, you can't pretend that.
No, it's the same thing as Donald Trump doing the thing he does that we hate even more all the time.
Right.
Like, it's the same exact thing. Like, this thing is disgusting, and fuck you. We're going to make it even more disgusting.
Right, yeah.
Well,
that's all it is. It's not confusing.
He's got $200 million in this super PAC, apparently, and they're going to spend something like $100 million in the next little while just trying to get the word out about DeSantis in important states.
So the article talks about this $200 million. I had like two quick thoughts on DeSantis now that he's officially in. It's remarkable how much ground he lost since the midterms. Like, the midterms, the story from the midterms in 22 was basically every Trump-picked candidate underperformed. Like, most of them lost outright. Other people, it was much closer than it should have been based on the district and how the 2020 election shaked out. And then on the other side, DeSantis just mopped the floor with Crist or whomever he ran against. He won by 20, a landslide victory, and he was the heir apparent. Everything's looking great. Trump.
Then he picked a fight with one of the most powerful corporations in the world.
Right, and that seems to be going to be a recurring problem for DeSantis because, on paper, he should be the next person. He's younger than Trump. He'll execute similar plays to Trump. So it's not like if you're a Trump person, you're sacrificing policy for if you go with DeSantis. He's younger. In theory, he has less baggage, right? And so, that would be an easy transition from, hey, nice run, Trump. Now we can go to DeSantis, and at least it'll be a different matchup than 2020. So you want, because if you run it back, it'll probably be a similar result, right? If it's old man Biden and old man Trump, let's shake it up and get DeSantis in. So he has all of this going for him, right? A viable candidate, and he's on the same platform basically as Trump. Why not? And now that he's announcing in May, he's 30 points behind Trump, who has, since the midterm failures, has gotten more bad news where he's getting indicted and he's going to be indicted again in the summer. All the bad things that are happening. He's got the civil case with the sexual assault thing. Nothing good has happened to him.
You mean he's under assault from the mainstream press and the liberal media and typical complaining Democrats and rhino Republicans. Therefore, it's not, in fact, anything bad that's happening to him. It's only being reinforced with his base.
Right. So the problem with DeSantis is this $200 million push. This apparently they're going to have twice as many foot soldiers or organizers as a Bernie Sanders campaign had, and there were plenty of those. Right. So you're thinking all this money, all of these people with this outreach, trying to get Trump supporters to flip, and I'm thinking what is the pitch? Trump is a known candidate. He's a known person, right? What is DeSantis going to offer that Trump isn't already doing? And also, anytime something negative goes against DeSantis, he's a very conventional candidate. The polls show a lower mark, right? Like he gets into this ridiculous, absurd fight with Disney, right? This dumb fight, and it's not going well for him, and it's hurting his stock, right? Because
it's against Republican values.
I know, but if Trump did it, Trump could take a shit on the mouse, and his numbers would stay flat. Like for some reason, like Trump, it doesn't matter what bad happens, he'll be where he'll be. DeSantis, if when he wins, the numbers go up. If he does something stupid, the numbers go down. He's like a conventional candidate. So like he's going into this race 30 points behind against a guy who can do no wrong. I mean, all he does is wrong, but the wrong has no impact.
And he's also deeply unappealing. Whenever I see him talk, DeSantis
That's
is
the
a
other
deeply
problem.
unappealing
Apparently,
individual.
he's a bit of a stiff, So it's like he's not even like charming in the way they,
they believe his super PAC believes that they have, and I'll just quote from this article. Republican primary voters, Mr. Rowe said, this is the super PAC guy, see the battle against the progressive left as an existential fight. He argues that Mr. DeSantis, not Mr. Trump, has led on 3 touchstone issues in that fight. 1, taking on corporate America. 2, engaging in what is being taught in schools. And 3, confronting shifting norms and acceptance around sexual orientation and transgender medical care. So what we will hear with that $200 million is his fight against Disney, right? Taking on corporate America, right. That's 1. More of this stuff about schools. So if you thought that you were done with the don't say gay stuff and that kerfuffle about the African-American AP history class that he got into at the beginning of the year, that will be a feature of this campaign. And 3, we will have many more conversations about the transgender medicine stuff.
Right. It seems like the DeSantis blueprint to defeating Trump is to go to the right of him on culture issues, right? Like just like basically like they see an opportunity when it comes to abortion.
Right. But no one actually believes that. No Trump supporter actually believes that anyone is to the right of Trump on any culture issue, because Trump will just say whatever fucking crazy nonsense he needs to say to get the media to freak out about it, and therefore establish what the rightmost thing is. And then the media will talk about how so and so is an ultra right whatever, even though the traditional left right dynamic actually has nothing to do with the conversation whatsoever. It's just if Trump takes a absurd position, then it becomes what the ultra right now believes in.
Yeah, he can literally shape what the party is. DeSantis doesn't have that power. So like if like a year from now things flipped, because these Sunday morning talk show talking head types are like, oh, back in 2007, Obama was 30 points behind Hillary and he turned things around. Like Obama was on the ascendancy, and DeSantis seems to be kind of just stuck in this position. And other candidates obviously see a weakness, because now it's going to be, I forget the number that you had as far as the GOP field, like 15, 16, 17. It's going to be some ridiculous numbers. You're going to have 2 different nights of debates, like the A crowd and the B crowd.
Again, it's going to be the same. It's going to be a monster field, like I said it was going to be. And we have Tim Scott is now also officially in as of this week.
And is
DeSantis
your boy going to get
course.
in? He keeps on going back and forth.
It looks like Northam is not Northam. I always say Northam. It's not Ralph Northam. He was the Democrat. What is his name? Glenn Youngkin is the Republican governor of Virginia. He cannot run again in Virginia. He's not permitted to run for back-to-back terms. And so I could see no reason why he wouldn't get into this race if he wants to stay in the national eye.
Right.
And apparently, after saying that he wasn't going to, it looks like his camp is reconsidering entering the race.
I mean, and
it's going to be a big bunch.
He released that that weird ad that wasn't really an ad.
Right. He went to the Reagan Library and gave a big speech about how he is the inheritor of the Reagan legacy, and he's the one to carry the Reagan torch forward, and put out a Twitter video to that effect, which looks by all readings exactly like a campaign video.
Very polished, and it's weird that there is that lane is somewhat available, right? That there could be somebody who can take on the Reagan legacy, because Trump, like, I don't need none of that, or the Bush stuff. Like, I'm my own thing, right? And everybody else is trying to be Trump, the Trump legacy.
Right. You would think that that's Nikki Haley's lane in a normal sort of year, but Nikki Haley is not interested in that lane because would rather pick a fight with the cultural leftists. Right. She's much more interested in making Dylan Mulvaney jokes at events in New Hampshire, which I don't know what these people think this translates to out in the wider world. But whatever. Rather make Dylan Mulvaney jokes than just go after fucking Trump, the front runner, who you're going to have to beat, you idiots, if you're going to actually win anything. There was this other article that came out today in the New York Times. The headline is, "For one group of teenagers, social media seems a clear net benefit." And this was on the heels of the Surgeon General releasing a report. It's like a 20-page government report, which means there's like 400 useful words in it, talking about how social media might not be great for the kids. And, of course, this has no force of law whatsoever. It's just sort of the Surgeon General, just sort of a bully pulpit for trying to make people live better lives. It doesn't get into any real specifics. I'm not thrilled by the research that the Surgeon General's report cites. So I'm not convinced yet that social media can be scientifically shown to be a net negative for humans or youths or whatever. It feels right to me.
Right.
It feels like that's true, and that spending too much time in front of screens and in these weird social relationships with not imaginary people. There are people over there, but they function as unreal humans to you.
There was a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who rented a U-Haul and tried to ram it at the White House, and he has like I don't know if they confirmed that there was a Nazi flag. It was like some flag that was not, Nazi-like. And it was like some Indian kid, right? And it's like, that's the internet. Like, I mean, that's some internet stuff. Like, you're just on some 4chan thing and you just consume all this nonsense and then you think you're whatever. Like,
It's the first time, every time I hear about Indians and the swastika, it's like, no, you see, it's not the same one. It's a different sort of, it's the other one. The things go in the other direction. It means something good. This is the first time that I've heard an Indian interacting with the actual swastika, and it turns out to have been the bad one.
When I went to India, we walked into a jewelry store, and as you walk in, they open up all the safes, like, to show you.
Yeah.
And on the insides, there were just swastikas.
Oh,
And it, like, just like, holy shit.
Open up the swastika safes for the white lady. We know she's got money.
And I was with Nitty, and I was just like, what the fuck? And she was like, no, it means different. Yeah. It's nice. It's a nice thing here.
No, they could smell the Jew on you, and they're trying to scare you out.
It's a good swastika.
Or they don't know. They see they're welcoming me. Like, oh, hi, white girl. Anyway, moving along.
The one group of teenagers that social media seems a clear net benefit for is LGBTQ youth, because researchers and teenagers say it can be a lifeline for them. And without getting into the specific details here, I just want to say this is the sort of thing that drives me the most crazy about identitarian politics, about the politics of identity, and it, by making this sort of distinction, by saying the research currently points to the idea that social media exposure and constant exposure to these screens and the weird parasocial relationships that we have with the people that we interact with them on is a net negative for humanity. Because it's a terrible experience for a human being. But if you're this other kind of human being, then in fact that cancels out. That the fact of this particular portion of your identity actually cancels out the rest of your humanity in a way, and says, because you're this weirdo, now this thing that's actually bad for normal humans, for the rest of us who don't identify in this way.
You could probably say the same thing about religion in a lot of ways.
I don't know. I don't understand the connection.
It's just that, like, religion's probably bad, but for lonely people, the community part makes it good enough to not be bad.
Yeah, I don't think that you can say that religion is necessarily... I don't think you can say it's bad in the same way that we would say that social media is bad. Maybe
it's not the same, but it's the same kind of thing.
The human instinct for religion, I think, might be a net negative. I don't think you can say that every instance of
But in every instance of social media isn't negative either.
Yeah, sure.
That's what I'm saying. I think you can say the same thing about religion. It's kind of probably not great, but for some people, it's keeping them alive. Same thing can be said about social media for the queer kid in the middle of nowhere, Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah, I think that on balance, while religion produces very negative outcomes for some percentage of people, I think that the balance is sort of the opposite. Like
I know, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm saying it's similar.
Okay, sure. Fine.
I do wonder if I was reading the article and it must have been some sort of, they must have gotten a heads up that the Surgeon General on Tuesday was going to publish something, because the next day, Wednesday, there was already like this written up thing that went like the next day. It was like I got the notification like on one day, and then the next day I was like, oh, but for this one subset of humans, not so bad. Maybe keep it up, right? And so I was like, that's weird how they got it so fast. But I do wonder if they made this argument clumsily in the article. But I do wonder if the argument that they're getting at is that, like remember the masks back in the day with that virus that was going around, and there were all these studies, and they were like, well, however effective masks are in the most like ideal situations, the way people were going about using it was not effective, and it wasn't any good. Right?
At a population level, we failed to properly mask, and therefore masks don't work.
Right, and I just.
But it also, you're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. So just to kind of finish the point, in theory, on paper, there is a way to use the internet in a good way, right? However, the way people are using it is harmful, and for most people, they're not filling a void of like a lack of community, lack of support, or whatever. So like all the stuff they're seeking out the internet for is like negative stuff, to be like trolls or like watch too much porn or just or
it just just bad for them.
And then the people who are like, they live in some bumfuck Kansas place and they don't have a community to support them, they go online and they seek to fill that void. And so like in that specific situation, that is like one of the positive ways that the internet can help you, right? But for most people, they're not like a person who doesn't fall under these categories, they're not seeking out some specific community. They're just there just to use the internet in a regular way.
In 2001, 2002, I was a freshman in college. My entire social media presence was my AOL AIM Instant Messenger account.
That's not social media.
It was
That's
similar.
Texting.
Right, but it was similar for me to social media. You had an ability. It was absolutely a proto-social media.
I think it was just texting.
You could post away messages in the same way that you could sort of post a message on your wall with Facebook many years later. It was a way for me to communicate with a very small, chosen group of friends. Right. What my status was. Including, I used it exactly like I used Facebook in the early days, where you put up stupid lyrics from a song that you're listening to. As your away message, you put up "Gone to dinner at the dining hall" or whatever the fuck. Like I basically used it as a Facebook wall, in addition to using it as its intended purpose, which was a messaging service. So to me, that was my first experience with what felt like social media. It was a performance of myself for a small selected group of friends, a couple of hundred people on my AOL AIM list, and the really like the dozen or so that I would actually talk to on a regular basis. So to me, it was very much an early version of like a MySpace page or a Facebook page, the way that we used to understand them. So I'm not one of these LGBTQ plus people. I would have said in 2001, 2002 that this is just how I talk to my friends, that this is just a normal net benefit thing for me. Ultimately, I was a lonely kid my freshman year in college. I didn't make very many new friends. I had a couple of friends from high school, but I didn't fucking do anything. I didn't go out and play and hang out and like do normal college kid stuff. For the most part, I just went to class and moped about in my room and chatted on AIM with my old high school friends. Right. And that wasn't good. right? Like, even though to me, in the moment, it felt like a net benefit and it gave me a sense of belonging and community with my friends that I had previously established in earlier times in my life, it didn't help me at all in any meaningful way.
Not even in the moment? I mean, look, if you thought of it as a bridge to, like, okay, for a year until I kind of find my footing in this new environment, I'm going to have...
No, it's not how I was thinking of it. I wasn't that self-aware. To me, it was just a great way to talk with people that I liked and cared about and not have to worry about making new groups of friends or anything along those lines. And it ended up, like, by the end of freshman year, sort of towards the beginning of sophomore year, I ended up with a good group of friends who I would, like, hang out with in a normal sort of grown-up sort of way.
So what was the problem?
The problem was that I did not get out of my room in the same way that I would have had I not had that social media lifeline sitting there on my laptop 24 hours a day.
But maybe you would have just driven home.
No, I wouldn't have. I mean, I know that I wouldn't have. I'm just saying that.
But you're saying, so absent this ability to communicate online that was available to you, you would have been more compelled to make friendships sooner, like in person?
I think I would have definitely been more likely to hang out with the people in real life who I had sort of semi-social relationships with, whether it was my roommate and whatever his group of friends were, or a couple of kids that I became friendly with in a couple of classes, or just my old high school friends. Like, I was on a hall with, I mean, I wasn't friends with them, but there were 6 dudes that I knew on my, not just on my floor, but just on my hall.
Right.
Like, we sent 120 kids to UGA my freshman year, right? There were a ton of us. So I knew plenty of people, and in fact was good friends with a couple of them. But I didn't get out nearly as much as I should have because I had all the social outlet that I needed right there on the computer.
But could you apply... Okay, so I understand that, but you can apply your situation to an LGBT person in Kansas. That opportunity is not available for them to, like... Right? I mean, like, if you came to Athens, Georgia, and people were just hostile to baseball, and you love baseball, and you just want to talk about baseball...
I think we tend to overplay how isolated everybody is in their own...
How everybody is versus how isolated they feel.
Right. They feel isolated because they don't go out and experience the world and find other people in real life to have normal social human interactions with. And instead, they complain about being isolated on the internet all the time.
But you don't think that's actually...
It's absolutely a self-reinforcing thing. And
maybe in some cases, but you don't think that it reflects accurately what they're experiencing? Like, they are being shunned by this conservative, like, small group of people?
I think in relatively rare cases, relative to the way that we imagine it, is someone actually in such a small area that they cannot make friends with other little weirdos like themselves, right? And that's what it comes down to for me, is, yes, we hear about the LGBTQ community as though it's some sort of identity, as though it's some way of defining yourself and finding a position for yourself in the world. In reality, I think it's no different than the experience of most other sad, lonely kids, and I don't know why we have to make these sorts of distinctions. There are always sad little weirdos who are on their own and have to build their own communities out of the other sad little weirdos out here. It has always been such, right? It's just normal human stuff. And to suggest that these people exist outside of the normal rules of all of the rest of us because of their unique so-called, when, like, what does it even mean to be uniquely LGBTQ plus at this point, considering that in excess of 25 or 30% or something of Gen Zers identify in that fashion? Like, what are we even talking about? Who's isolated at this point?
I mean,
doesn't even make any sense.
At some point, like, you know, I can see how some people could mischaracterize something, but a lot of people are saying these things. Like, I mean, they can't all be making it up. That is their experience of life. It may not be like your experience. You don't think that there's like some big city...
No, I'm saying it is absolutely an experience of life. A perfectly normal human experience of life that we all go through overwhelmingly.
But how do you know? Okay,
so not everybody. My brother, you know, I have... forward-facing what is the word? Not introverted.
Okay.
I have extroverted family members who would never experience this sort of thing. And then I have introverted family members and friends who have experienced being an isolated weirdo, right? I felt like an isolated weirdo at times. That's just what happens. It's just a normal aspect of human experience, and your particular identities, though they are unique and personal to you, don't actually play a role in a meaningful way.
And you can rule out a big city bias on your end. You don't think that people that live in bumfuck wherever are experiencing it differently?
Yeah, sure. I'm not. First of all, if at the low end 5% of people are the absolute low end, the number that I used to hear is that like 5% of people are gay, right? Something along those lines. That's
it was 10%.
I thought it was 10%. That Kinsey, whatever.
Okay, 10%. So then 10 out of every 100 people are gay. Yeah. You got to live in a really small town to not be able to find any other gays, right?
But that's the thing. They're not allowed to act. They're allowed, obviously, but they don't find each other. They might find each other on the fucking internet on their Google location. It's like, oh, look, I found the other gay person in my town that's my age. Right. And, like, that's your only choice for a friend that's like you?
What I'm saying is that the sort of relationships that you build online, and I think it's obvious when you look at any of the isolated weirdos who congregate online, it's usually bad outcomes, right? It's not unique to white nationalist weirdos who isolate, who gather themselves online.
World of Warcraft people.
Right. Isolated weirdos. It's not always going to be a positive experience. And that's all I'm saying. Just because you've got a 14-year-old who feels like you're killing them if you take their phone away because they can't make any friends in real life, you're not. They are living an impoverished life if they're spending 20 hours a day looking at their fucking phone.
I wonder what your second youngest cousin would have to say about this. Be interesting.
I don't know who you're talking about. Just say the name.
Chris.
I think he would agree with me that living entirely online
I'm not saying I wonder what he would have to
life.
say because he would disagree. I literally wonder what he would have to say.
Just for the record, Bob, you're saying, despite your misgivings about the science, like the overall thinking is that the internet is a net negative for everybody. There's no carve-outs. There's no
social media.
Yeah,
particularly social media. Yeah, I don't
take
think
away
that,
the internet.
I don't think that you can carve out a particular identitarian group and say these people know how to use it without, and that somehow the benefits outweigh the harms. I think you said back in 2000 whatever the fuck that we're going to find out that cell phones are the thing that ruined us, that they're giving us all brain cancer or whatever. And you sort of said it as a glib sort of joke because we just accepted them into our lives. Right. It's like we went from one day, nobody has weirdos have car phones, maybe these big brick things that lawyers carry around, and then all of a sudden it's like smartphones have 90% uptake, and we're all just walking around with them, like nobody really thought about it. And I sort of enjoy that from a more philosophical, less brain killing sort of way. That like, what if this technology that we've all adapted is completely maladaptive to the human experience, that it's actually a malignant presence in our lives, and we've never really considered the possibility that just because we can, maybe we shouldn't.
Right, and my next flippant prediction is that this Gen Z, this younger generation that's coming through, that their entire experience is the internet. Like we straddled both ways. Like they're like
we are the superior generation. Yes,
they're like the guinea pig generation. Like we're gonna learn a lot about what happens to them and change course. Like, oh, those people are fucked.
Yes. Well, I talk all the time about how I think that, for example, our kids are gonna be so different than teenagers now. Like, it's not even that big of an age difference, but because we're like, fuck no, you can't have social media. Are you insane?
It's like, no, the horrible idea.
Like, I talk about it all the time. It's going to change real fast.
It better. Like, and I mean, like, I don't think that we're going to be the only parents
That's
who are
what
like,
I mean.
Absolutely not.
Like, it's as a group, all of us superior elder millennial generation are all like, absolutely, my kids are not getting cell phones. Like,
I'm horrified by my own use. I'm horrified by how much time I spend looking at the screen and want to work to do better. And that is before I look at like what my youngest siblings are doing with the fucking things. Like, no, this is not how life is supposed to be. I don't care how it makes you feel in the moment. This is obviously very bad for you, and I can
Bob's
tell.
not going to let our kids read comics this summer. That's how hardcore he is.
You know, the thing is, I don't envy you parents, because like at some point, like it is like you can do the best you can up to a certain point, and once they have a peer group and they're like in middle school and up, like they're fucked. It's like,
yeah, it gets tougher when the everybody else is doing it thing happens, but sorry.
Yeah. But especially because now it's sort of like being a person who doesn't want to drive a car anymore, right? It's in the way that the entire society, all of civilization here in the States, is built around the idea that every person sits at home in an isolated fashion and then gets in a car to go to the grocery store or to go get a gallon of milk from the corner store,
to do anything
or whatever. It's just the default. And to be a weirdo living in the suburbs who doesn't want to drive a car, it requires Herculean effort to be a person who isn't in a car at that point. At that point, right? Like you have to go.
It would be disruptive to just your everyday life. Like it would have to be like in a very concentrated area to make it work.
Right, and that's what I mean with the kids. Like when they go to high school and we have to pick them up at different times because we have different things going on, or like whatever your crazy lives get. There's no more public phones around. Yeah. They can't just send us a quick beeper message or something along those lines. No, but we can get
them phones that don't do anything but call us.
Right, and that's
like you can do that. We have the technology to track every little movement they make. Like every text they send, we can see it.
Right. It's still going to feel like weirdly hypocritical when I hand them the phone that only does the one thing. Like,
no, but like you said about the 2-year-old with the gentle parenting, like you're a fucking idiot kid. You don't get the same phone I get. Sorry.
Right. All right. Real quick on the Euthyphro. Abe, you didn't happen to read Plato's Euthyphro, did you?
I did.
All right. What was your impression of Euthyphro?
More specifically, hold on.
Lori has a very specific, almost as though it is a homework-like question.
Hold on. On Euthyphro, okay, so let's just say there's a kid who's a foster kid who is aging out of the system, and he has like criminal friends, like street buddies.
Such a stupid question, by the way, but go ahead.
My teacher pointed out, like he was like, I didn't write these questions. Like he's very not thrilled about this. So he has friends, and they kind of want him to join their gang. That's not what it says, but that's the subtext. Oliver had some encounters with church and other adults, but he started to wonder, how do we know what is right and wrong? And specifically Euthyphro's dilemma, and I don't know how it pertains to this actually, but the question is, how does it help us understand the relationship between religion and ethics? Which, to me, it doesn't.
Okay. That's interesting. So this is like
I'll let Abe characterize his experience of reading this as he wants to, and then we'll get back to your question.
So my I just read it just now. I had to like Google like just so I can hear how that word is.
I did the same.
Yeah, because I don't know what that is, but so it seems like my takeaway seems to be like is there like an objective like right, or is it right because an authority said it's right? So basically, like religion, like God is saying this is the way because I said it, versus like the other way of thinking, like this, don't murder people because it's wrong to murder people, not because somebody told you not to do it. So it's like the distinction is, what is the source of the authority? Is it like the person or like God in one case, or just it's like a self-evident truth where this is just the wrong thing to do or the right thing to do? And so, like, it just depends. To me, like, it just comes to, like, what are you looking for? Like, people seek out religion for many things and not necessarily just for, like, an objective truth. Like, is that what people are seeking? Like, I don't get this dilemma because, like, for religion, there's a host of things that people are for, fellowship, community, meaning, purpose, all that stuff, right? And so, like, if it satisfies those things...
Ethics has almost nothing to do with it.
Right. Ethics has nothing to do with that. It just kind of stands on its own. And so it's like, if you're in it for salvation or belonging or whatever, you're going to, whatever God said, like, hey, take a shit on Sundays only. All right, I'm going to do that. Like, I'm not going to question it. And the whole thing of faith is that you shouldn't think about, like, it doesn't make sense or it does make sense or there's an objective reason or some other reason. It's just you do it because you're told, and that's the authority. And so, like, I don't know, like, in not to go back to your assignment, but, like, what is the root of the question about this gang? Should I join a gang or not?
The question seems to be, Oliver is a kid who's about to find himself choosing between staying in, like, on the straight and narrow path and going to the foster home and trying to be a good kid, or he can find community with the criminals on the street. And the criminals on the street, the gangs have been like, hey, come hang out with us. Fuck it. It's way better here. And they give him a couple dollars for food and that sort of thing. And how do we convince Oliver?
What I said in my response to Oliver in the question was, I don't know how the distinction between ethics and religion has to do with your particular situation, but, like, I don't see how that pertains. They have to ask the question, you know, like, I will play your game, you fucking college. I hate it, but, like, I'll play your stupid game. But I didn't even need to tell you what the prompt was, except the relationship between ethics and religion, which I said, if there is one, my final answer is Socrates, the character who I dislike because he reminds me of my husband when he's being a dick. Socrates is doing logic where he's trying to use logic. He's doing ethics where he's trying to use logic and, you know, eliminating the choices that don't make sense to determine what is right or wrong, where Euthyphro is doing religion. Right.
God is always the one God is telling you not to do something just because God says so, whereas we have been given the tools of reason and logic and rationality to try to come to some firmer answers on these questions. And ultimately, Euthyphro is presented by Socrates with what's called Euthyphro's dilemma, which is an unsolvable one, which is that you can't really ever figure out whether something is good because some external authority says it's good, or if something is good on its own terms. It's a difficult thing to work your way through, certainly.
Anyway, I'm done reading Plato. I have to take my test tomorrow.
It may be a hard thing to resolve, but it's incompatible with religion, though, right? Like, it can be either or if your pursuit is religion. The authority source has to be God, right? Because, like, if it's the other thing, then something independent of God is determining.
Which is sort of Socrates' whole point, is that we should have humility when we're confronting these sorts of questions, because these are not answers that we can actually truly know. You could decide to just have faith, or decide that, yes, here is the foundation, right? Here's this turtle on which the world sits, and therefore that's just the fucking way it is, and that's the way that I've decided it, and I'm going to build my entire worldview around this one particular foundational tenet of faith. But you must acknowledge that that's what it is, right? You can't then say, and it is true for everyone, right? You cannot then go further and say, this is the case because I say it is the case.
There are a lot of religious people in the world, I guess, but also in this class. And some people, like a good chunk of people, cannot get away from, like, what they read is the gods, you know, because the paper, the whatever you call this thing, what is it? What do you call it?
What?
Story?
It's a dialogue.
Dialogue. You know, the gods are referred to. And, like, well, what if one god likes it and the other, like, Zeus doesn't like the same thing as the other guy? Yeah. So many of them hinge on, well, the problem is that you have too many gods.
Right.
You need just the one, and then you'll have the then you'll know what the right answer is. And it's like,
Right.
no, you fucking moron. Your one God is pretend too.
Right. That's true. I mean, I was, but again, it goes back to like, what are they looking for? There are so many things that come with believing in the religion thing. There's like nothing but just like fact with the other. It's like a hopeless kind of thing. It's just like, it is the right thing to do. You get no heaven. There's no reconnection with loved ones. It's just, it is, right? So like, it's the less sexy option, and that's why religion thrives. There's like hope. They traffic in hope.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the point of the dialogue is for Socrates to be able to point out, or for Plato to point out, that this is just one of a billion chicken or the egg problems, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like that we will never know if that which is pious because it's good, or if it's only pious because the gods love it. Like these are the sort of things that they're irresolvable, and the only way to resolve them is to place them upon an irrational foundational faith. And that's fine if that's what you choose to do, I guess.
Yeah, it's all fine.
There's also that other, what is that, beauty is in the eye of the beholder? Like the answer is in the eye of the person who's like looking at it. Like, is whatever you think is the right thing, is the right thing.
Right. So is a great work of art great because it's great, or is it great because a lot of people think it's great? And
I mean, the second.
Yeah, big fan of the Avatar movies.
I was saying earlier today, I was excited.
All those fucking Marvel movies.
To hear Abe's just definitive, like, the second one. That's
it's
it.
Very simple.
I disagree.
Yeah,
I believe that something can be great on its own terms and be utterly unappreciated by any of the many billions of assholes out there in the world.
Could you be one of those assholes that doesn't appreciate things that are truly great?
Yeah, I think that
okay.
and I've come to honest terms, I believe, when interacting with certain works of art and believing that it is great, but it's not for me. And also, I think that it is perfectly fine for a person to say this wildly popular thing is an obvious piece of shit and is not good. And it's mostly,
but it doesn't make it objective truth. It's just like one person's.
Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't make it objective, but it means that you can argue for it, right? And most of the arguments for the shitty piece of art are just, I like it. Well, that's not an argument, you stupid asshole.
Are we talking about the other things or not?
What other thing? The other
two, the Republic,
no,
where they
not,
argue
we're not
the
getting
whole
there.
time. Well, you guys, Plato's Republic is about a bunch of people arguing, which is upsetting to me, and I'll never read it again. And then we also had to read Aristotle, where he says, okay, so you have, like, the function of the eye is to see stuff. And the function of the flute maker is to make really good flutes. And the function of the flute player is to play the flute really well. And then he's like, what is the function of a human? And the conclusion he comes to is to think. When it seems fairly obvious to me that the answer is to fucking get a job, like figure out what it is that your purpose is. It can't just be thinking. That's cute for a philosopher to say, I'm doing the right thing. See, this is what we're here for, is the thinky stuff.
We are here.
Like, get a goddamn job. Get a fucking job.
We are here to observe and report.
You can do that while having a job.
That is the highest good, to observe.
You can make flutes
and
while
report.
you observe and report. I don't know that this guy would consider getting a job, but he could have. I think he did. He was a teacher.
You've been listening to us, our observations.
He taught one of the most murderous people that's ever existed,
and
Alexander the Great.
reportages. Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. You can find the show on Facebook or Twitter. Head on over to brainiron.com, castironbrains.com for a show note. The opening and closing themes of our show were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, Tetramer music.com. Abe, did you make it to the movies in the past 7 days?
I did. This has been a rough month for, like, movies, as far as, like, good movies. Like, just Guardians of the whatever was not very good. Hypnotic was very bad. And now I went to go watch Fast 10, the latest installment of this stupid fucking franchise that never ends, with Vin Diesel and company. My understanding going into the movie, by the way, not a very good movie, but going into it, I did not expect a good movie. So I'm not surprised there. I'm not knocking it for it being bad.
Right.
My understanding going into the movie was like there was going to be this one and then there was going to be like one more, right? Maybe. That's all I knew. But this movie, this not very good movie, ends on a cliffhanger, which was like very infuriating. Like it's like, no, we're not going to cliffhang this stupid thing. Like
almost like the end of a part one rather than a true movie.
I mean, they did that classic, like the camera just kind of like focuses on the surprise, like the Wonder Woman lady. She's like somebody in this fucking universe. I don't know what she does, but
is she in these movies? I didn't know
she's
she
been
was
in a bunch of
movies.
them. Yeah, she'd been in a bunch of them, but like,
fuck,
the movie is like 2 hours in. I'm like, all right, what's going on? This movie is not coming to an end. It's still going.
Is it just like a big stupid soap opera? Like, is that the appeal of this? That it's basically like soap opera, like wrestling or whatever? It's the same sort of thing.
So the formula seems to be a new big bad shows up in one of the movies, right? Like, let's say The Rock or that Jason Statham guy or Charlize Theron, and now Jason Momoa, right? Like in one movie, like Fast 5, like the big bad is the big bad, and then in the next one, they're like part of the family. They're like, all right, we may have had our differences, but this new reality compels us to blah, blah, blah. And so Charlize Theron was the bad in the last one, and the movie opened with her like, oh, I know you hate me, but like we have a bigger concern. And it's like the charming Momoa guy being like...
There's always a bigger fish, right?
So in a two-parter like this, I don't know if Momoa is going to become good all of a sudden in this continuation, but like don't watch it unless you're into cars. I mean, there are a lot of vroom vroom, you know.
Certainly.
Yeah, we're not.
Weren't the first couple like relatively grounded in reality, and then
the first one was kind of fun, and then the second one.
I never saw them. I've never seen a single one of these for more than 10 seconds.
I think there's like a meme out there, but somebody was cropped the two pictures between the first Fast and the Furious and the most recent one, and it was like. It started out, they were like, the plot of the first one was like they're stealing like DVD players or like PlayStation 2s. And then like not the Fast 10, but the last one, Fast 9, they were like going to space. It's like, it's like a lot of range. Like every new installment, they have to get more ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense, but
So there's definitely going to be an 11. Will they ever stop? How much money did this one make this weekend?
It actually did. It did less than 100 million. Like I don't know if they're expecting more.
Maybe interest is waning. Maybe they really will wrap it up.
It is. I mean, the theater I was in was mostly full, but like I don't know. But yeah, they're going to do at least one, and it seemed like they're going to do a bunch of spin-offs. Like all these little characters are going to have their own thing.
The Fast universe, like great.
Yeah.
Anything else? Or just the one this week?
No. On the movie front, that's what I watched. But HBO launched their new like streaming thing this week. Just Max is what they're calling it.
Yeah. And they had to ditch the HBO label because when you have a prestigious and universally recognized for quality brand like HBO, what you want is to ditch it and just go with an utterly meaningless 3-letter thing called Max.
Yeah, that's what they're going for. So like I was kind of browsing the new library for like new shows because I don't watch too many like shows from TLC and whatever the hell is coming on board.
Yeah.
And some of the shows are like, I haven't watched all of them, but that Dr. Pimple Popper thing is part of the package now. There's a show called MILF Manor. There's a show called, it's just like a lot of like.
MILF Manor is the one where they put a bunch of middle-aged ladies in a house and then they put a bunch of their 20-year-old sons in the same house.
Oh, is that the gimmick?
Try to get them to sleep with each other.
Is that real? Are you describing a real thing?
This is MILF Manor. It's an actual reality show in which a bunch of horned up middle-aged women are put in a house with their horned up 20-year-old sons and then are told to fuck each other, but not along the incestual line.
Right,
but
of course. Come on, this is a family show.
To branch out.
By the way, don't tell me whether or not this is true just yet. But when I was looking at the titles of these shows, I was thinking of like that wacky shit that you know,
right.
Yes.
Because literally, like some of these things, like if Bob had like concocted like, oh, this new show is called MILF Manor, and the conceit is cross-pollinating like whatever, it's like this. Right. I would just think, oh, that's totally made up. Is it made up? Is that actually?
It's not.
That's a real thing. These are real. My 600-pound life and like all of the different.
Is the MILF Manor plot what you described?
That's what it is. Yeah, I didn't just make that up. That's literally true.
It sounds made up. Anyway, that's what I'm just perusing the new library of content.
So I haven't played around with the app since the new one launched. Do they like segregate off HBO into its own vertical?
No,
like,
I mean, basically, it's like these rows of content, and so it's not that different from the HBO Max. Like, it's slightly different, but like, at least on my phone. I haven't used it on my TV. I just was playing around with it while I was hard at work. And it seemed like they just added new content, but it didn't look that different. You had to download a new app.
I saw some complaining about it on the internet. Apparently, launch day was
Yeah, but that just means it exists.
not great. Yeah. Jesus, you just sent us a picture. You, me, and my ex awake surgery. Is that one of those like people who were supposed to be put under, but in fact were not put under?
Yeah,
certainly what it sounds like. God damn.
What a nightmare. I mean, there's similar nightmarish content on Netflix all of the time, though. So
yes.
But I guess there's a demand for it. There's that channel that's like, you know, my husband killed me or whatever. Like, it's just everything is just like some weird.
Well, true crime is a whole different thing.
Right.
There's nothing more embarrassing than like if we have somebody at our house and I have to navigate to Netflix, and you go into the like.
You're just talking about Abe.
Continue watching. It's like no, don't show them what fucking trash we put on at like 12:30 at night when we're not even really looking at the television.
Amazon keeps acting like we've watched shit that we have not watched.
Oh.
I think Amazon is like they're showing it to us in our sleep because we put on some trash to go to sleep to, some bad Christian movies. And it's like, hey, you watched this whole entire series of bad Christian documentaries. Like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? And
like, yeah, you did.
Bezos
you liked
is
it.
like, you did, and you watched it, and you're gonna watch more of it. It's fucking creep. Did we watch anything?
We sure did. For as long as it's existed, I've wanted to see Whiplash.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd never seen
Oh,
it.
no kidding.
And now it's on Amazon.
Oh,
yeah.
And we were doing the stupid shit we do where the activity is what are we going to watch? And as soon as that scrolled by, I was like, that one. That's it. Press play. That's it. Stop scrolling.
Yeah. So that's
so good.
Damien Chazelle, the guy who I think this is his first big movie, if I have my timeline down.
Yeah,
correctly.
right. I think so. Because is he the one that did
know
La
who
La
that
Land
is.
and Babylon
He did La La
that didn't
Land.
do so hot?
And then that movie that came out last year that didn't make any money about the Hollywood, like early 30s Hollywood or something.
Yeah.
Babylon?
Yep.
Yeah. Which I also wanted to see and will see eventually. But Whiplash was great.
So good.
And
how much was it like Finding Forrester?
it's not, I mean, it's certainly sort of harsher than Finding Forrester.
I just know you like that movie so much.
Yeah, I love Finding Forrester. I don't think of them as similar movies at all. This is a movie that is entirely about what it takes to be great at something, right? And it's Abe, I'm surprised. I'm not necessarily surprised that you liked it because it is as a movie on its own, it's a good movie.
It's so
I
good.
imagine you disagree with the teaching methods
I think it's ridiculous.
employed by the J.K. Simmons character.
My one problem with the movie, it's like my only little tiny. So he's drumming so much that his hands are bleeding.
Yeah.
They make gloves that you can wear, and they make like tape that you can put to prevent that from happening and protect it once it's happened. And in this universe, those things don't exist.
Right. Yeah.
My only problem with the movie.
The movie, great movie. But you're right. Like I guess I can never connect with people that are like that. They're like so into, and then what? Like, oh, you can play this stupid fucking drum. Like, what? To me, this seems like a pointless exercise. It's like, what is the point of this? All this effort for what? Like, I watch like documentaries about like some ballerina and their legs are all fucked up. It's like, just don't do the ballerina thing. Just do something else. Like, people put themselves through these things.
Well, they're supposed to be just sitting and thinking.
Yeah, more thinking, less the other stuff. That's what I say.
It's a question of drive. It's a question of hate, rage, win. That's all I want out of the best, and it's what it takes. What it takes to be the absolute best at something, unless you're just a complete fucking gifted freak of nature, right? Unless you're just a fucking weirdo who didn't earn any of it. And then what good is it, right? To me, simply being born the greatest whatever the fuck is entirely unimpressive. I do not care.
That was my favorite ending of a movie I've ever seen, maybe.
It is an incredibly strong ending to a movie.
Like,
and you have
it's
to,
good.
You have to accept the utter the anti-realism of it, right? Because first of all, J.K. Simmons doesn't even clap in time, I don't think, when watching them. Like, and it's never clear to me at any point, and I don't think it's just that I am a person utterly without rhythm. Acknowledge that. I don't think it's entirely clear to me that when our Miles Teller character, the main character in the movie, outperforms his fellow drummists there. It's never clear to me that he was actually performing in a better fashion.
I think if there's an explanation for it or an excuse, and it could be the same thing, it's that you and like the untrained ear wouldn't.
Right, that's what I accepted. I accepted in the very opening moments of the movie.
Like, okay,
that
I don't get
whatever they're going to tell me narratively about what's going on with the good drumming versus the bad drumming, I will just accept. Because I will assume that they're wrong. I will not believe that they have gotten it entirely right, but it doesn't matter to me. So I put all of that aside, and I just enjoyed the movie, and it's a spectacular movie. The absurdity, the insanity of him getting T-boned by a big truck at like 50 miles an hour and being fine enough to drag himself out of the flipped over car and then run bleeding, obviously bleeding, to the stage to attempt to perform I just love it. Like, yes, give me the fucking flu game 1,000,000 times in a row. Inject it right into my veins. It's exactly what I want out of movies. And that closing scene where J.K. Simmons fucks him, right? He brings him on stage and is like, hey, you know all that stuff that you wanted to play that you're so good at? We're not playing that. We're going to play this other fucking thing. And you're fucked and you don't even have the music for it. And you're going to look like a total asshole. And then he walks off stage and he comes back on and he does the thing that Simmons was pushing him to do all along, right? And it's like if you and it won't happen for everybody, right? And this is why I'm going to show it to my kids and tell them this doesn't happen for fucking anybody. 99 times out of 100, you fail, you're face down in the muck, and you're fucking dead. The truck T-bones you. You cannot drag yourself out of that fucking thing. You died because you're a fucking moron. But every once in a while, one time out of a goddamn million, you get pushed in the right direction hard enough. You push yourself in that direction hard enough. It will work out. And not because you're gifted or talented or God smiled upon you that day, but because you worked your fucking ass off. And every once in a while, it's okay.
In the music room, in that auditorium we were in, that you were in, there's this little sign, large sign, that says, dreams don't work if you don't.
By the way, if I were to have one of these kids and I showed them this movie, the takeaway would be, don't be so fucking self-involved that in an accident, the first thing concerned is some stupid drums. Like, don't be that delusional. Come on, go to the hospital.
Right. As a metaphor for the sort of drive it takes to be the absolute best at something, to transcend normal human reality and actually become great in a way that greatness in terms that we don't normally think of it. Truly transcendent greatness is not an accident. It is something that happens as a result of insane dedication and drive and at the sacrifice of nearly everything else. And you need to decide whether or not you're willing to sacrifice so much of your own humanity in order to achieve something along those lines. Most people aren't. And it's good. It's good that most people aren't. I obviously don't have the sort of drive necessary that the Miles Teller character has and never will. But I really appreciate it in other people. Do I want to be friends with him? Do I want to hang out with Michael Jordan and talk to him about his playing days? No, I do not. But I do want to watch him express his hate and rage on the basketball court. Right. That's all I ask.
And I think it's like all those pursuits are a fool's errand. If somebody was brave enough to go into a burning building to save somebody, very impressive. Playing some stupid drums, not impressed at all. Do the first thing. Help somebody else.
Yeah. All right. Succession, the penultimate episode. By the way, fucking like 75 minutes long, and it's not the longest episode of the season. This next episode is going to be 90 minutes long.
Ooh, that's like a feature-length movie.
What did you think of the second to last episode of Succession, Abe?
So, Roman, what a choker. You know, like, obviously, crying for your dead old man, it's perfectly healthy, perfectly normal. No issues there.
Not the way he did it, but yeah,
but,
sure.
Yes. But he hadn't done it.
Yeah, he just hasn't been grieving this whole time. But, like, you know, in the 8th episode, he was like a little shit, you know, like, who cares? And then...
Yeah, clearly he was going through something.
So, yeah, he was...
So I think I've got some problems with the structure of this season. I'm not sure that this was entirely worked out properly in the writer's room. Roman was the one who was comfortable enough to walk to the plane and watch his dad's body disembark. Kendall is the one who hung back, who could not go forward, could not engage whatsoever with the body bag even as it came off the plane. It's weird to me that I think if we were to go back and rewatch this last season, which, by the way, in my opinion, is the only season so far that is worth a rewatch. This is, I think, probably the best season of Succession so far. And they're doing their best work here on the way out. And I have no interest in going back and rewatch. But I do think that there's some inconsistencies with the characters. And it's because they're trying to do this thing where, we built them up in episode 5, so they're on top of the world here. And then episode 4 or episode 6, it's like, nope, you thought that they were on top of the world. Now the next asshole is on top of the world. And this is like this. It's so obvious coming in when we see the intro that Roman was going to shit the bed at the funeral, right? Like the only reason to make him give that charming speech in front of his own mirror where he's all full of himself and I'm Roman the showman, I'm going to do a fucking killer job and slay all these assholes at my dad's funeral and everybody's going to think I'm awesome. Like, well, obviously this isn't going to work out for Roman.
Do you think that his uncle or the Logan's brother, like, you know, that speech that wasn't planned, that he, you know, basically like, love my brother, but he was a piece of shit, you know, like, you know, they had like a kid, one of their siblings died, or he gave them polio or something. But like he just kind of had this speech about like this person was a piece of shit. Some of you already know, but he was my brother and I loved him. And then he sat down. Do you think that unexpected speech threw Roman off because he was going to just do a puff thing, like he's a man of a titan, you know, man of industry, blah blah blah.
I think that the sudden humanization of Logan in an honest way was devastating to Roman. I think it was a spectacular work by James Cromwell.
Right. He did it.
By the way,
that was great.
A tremendously well written speech and very well delivered. A terrific set piece. The whole funeral thing was a fantastic piece of work of television, and it made the rest of the episode feel like utterly pointless. Right. Like I know that just because of the structure of the way television works, we couldn't have ended with the funeral. Just the way the season has worked out. But like to me, a lot of the stupid politicking behind the scenes about Mencken and Matsson and who's going to overcome who. Not that it sucked the life out of the first half of the episode or the bulk, the first hour of the episode, but it didn't feel nearly as meaningful because of how good that opening funeral scene was.
Right.
Kendall's riposte to his uncle, I thought, was also very well done, and was not the sort of puffery that Roman was intending to give. And it's, of course, now we've built Kendall up to be the guy. Like he does that thing. Like I remember when I gave the speech at my brother's wedding, and when you do that sort of thing and you're super nervous about it, and then it goes really fucking well, your head completely detaches from your body. Like at least in my experience, like you're no longer present in your body in the way that you were before. And I recognized in Kendall floating around the funeral afterward and glad handing with people and like feeling all full of himself because of the great job he had just done. For me, it was more a feeling of immense relief and an out of body experience. But I saw some of myself in that as well. I don't know what else there is to say about that episode. Do
you think it? Like. Because I'm thinking, like, leading now into the final episode, is it going to be just, like, a big reveal who's going to win, quote unquote, or the next
I hope
person?
that the old people win. Jerry, the old people.
Right, yeah.
I think that there's a big shoe to drop. There's a moment in this episode when Matsson is on the phone with Shiv, and she floats the idea of an American CEO. There's another cut in that scene that I swear to God they didn't give us. So there's a thing that you do when you're making television, and sometimes, and it happened in Whiplash, actually. It's a great example of it in Whiplash, where the shot is of the driver, and they're notably not giving you the reverse shot. Right.
Okay.
So as Miles Teller is driving, we're just seeing the one shot of him and no external shots of the car, when in a normal situation, like it's like when you're watching a car insurance commercial and you're in the car with the people and all of a sudden the car slams into them.
Yeah.
It's like you're waiting for that thing to happen because they're hiding something from you. And there's a shot when he's having the conversation with Shiv of him sitting in the limo, and it's a tight shot of just him in the limo, which means they're hiding from us who he's sitting in the limo with, right?
Okay.
There's somebody else who is the unnamed American CEO that he's going to go with, because it's not going to be Shiv, and that will be the person who succeeds, right?
Okay.
That is the person who wins Succession, and I'm sure that. I don't think it's Tom. It might be Greg, as silly as that is.
Right.
I think there's a halfway decent shot that the other person in the limo in that moment was Greg. And I was waiting for them to give us the establishing shot or the pullback shot of whoever's hanging out in the limo with Matsson, and they never gave it to us. And whoever that person was, they don't do flashbacks in this show. Notably, they never do flashbacks in this show. But I get the feeling that there was more information in that scene than we were given at the time, and that will be the answer to the entire stupid thing.
That could work.
Yeah. I don't know. Greg seems like the obvious, and almost too obvious at this point, because Greg has. There's the shot of Greg 2 episodes ago after he tells Kendall all of the shit that Shiv's been doing behind their back, where Greg rats out the fact that Shiv has been talking to Matsson. You can't really see it, but he walks across the frosted glass of the conference room that they're sitting in with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, like looking right at Shiv and just giving her the biggest smile the entire time. And I think that's they've certainly dropped a few hints this season that this could end up with stupid fucking Greg winning the whole thing.
It's such an absurd nominate, like in that universe, like this clumsy oaf is going to be the head of the.
But isn't it also in keeping with the entire cynicism of the entire thing? Like that we've got these dopes, this family of fucking dopes, and like people constantly fail upwards over and over and over again, and he can never get rid of them. And he's got the family name; he's close enough to it. It'll be plus it's a knife right into the heart of Cromwell, who's the only like true moral character. Like he's a self-righteous bastard,
right,
but he's also like the only moral actor in this entire goddamn universe. And if you can put a knife into that guy's heart at the end, by making Greg the guy who ascends to the throne here. Like, I think that's the sort of move that this show would do.
So are you ruling out the obvious, like the Kendall becomes his old man, like this deteriorating relationship with his family, and now
he cannot become his old man. He's too much of a fucking failure.
But
he's too much of a
so you don't
human.
think like it's going to be like what was that Dragon Game of Thrones, like who had a better story than Bran, this guy, this asshole who's just done nothing for 8 seasons?
I'll tell you why I don't think it's not going to happen with Kendall, and it's because of the interaction that he has with the body man in this episode. He goes to so they go from the funeral where the guy is openly weeping as Kendall walks out of the funeral, sort of with his own shit-eating grin on his face. And the bodyguard, Colin, I think is the guy's name, is visibly moved by the entire thing and obviously personally devastated by the loss of this guy that he apparently considered a real friend. Right. That conversation that they have at the after party of the funeral, which is the only thing that I can call it, because it's just a bunch of schmoozing assholes.
After party.
It is. That was a goddamn after party.
Yeah.
His interaction with that guy, who is one of only, I think, 2 or 3 people in the entire world who know the truth about what Kendall did at the wedding, right? Because Colin was one of the guys to help cover up the death of that kid. Logan being one of the other ones. I can't remember if there's anybody else who knows the full extent of Kendall's sins in that regard. So Kendall, of course, he's like, hey, I heard you've been talking to a shrink. Hope you didn't let slip anything about me being a goddamn manslaughterer. Right. Because that would be unfortunate. Why don't you come work for me? You've got nothing else going on. Talk to me. And Colin gives him like a, man, you're such a real piece of shit look, right? And I think that is what we're going to see bite Kendall in the ass in some form or fashion in the next episode.
I can see that.
Yeah. And the predictions game is silly, except to say that whoever's on top now, we can assume won't be on top tomorrow. And obviously, Shiv can't win. That's pretty clear. There's
that expression like shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Basically, like you can have a fortune be lost just in 3 generations based on like, the first generation earns it and they have these snot-nosed like kids who don't appreciate it and their kids fuck it up and ruin the whole thing. Like these Roys are so incompetent, I think they could do it in 2 generations. Like they have not demonstrated any sort of competence throughout ever since like their old man died. I mean, their old man is a piece of shit. Their mom is also not very good. But at least he's competent in the business sense until he got way too old. They are just flailing about and everything's just about some personal thing, like trying to like, I don't know, like some weird parental issues that instead of just doing normal business decisions, they're like, I'm doing this for something other than business.
So real quick, do you think that this show gave as good a good faith defense of Logan as is possible, or did their own politics get in the way of giving a full-throated defense of Logan the builder, right? Of Logan the strong fucking capitalist who puts food in the mouths of people all over the country. Like the fact that it comes out of Kendall's mouth almost automatically disqualifies it, right? And so I'm answering my own question, obviously, but in my opinion, this show's own low opinion of a figure like Logan made it impossible to give a fully good faith defense of Logan in a way that would be believable to this show's audience.
Right. And also, I mean, the focus of the show is, obviously he's portrayed as a successful titan of industry and all that stuff, but like most of the show is just focused on like the dysfunction of the family and how it's impacting each of the children, and so like for 4 seasons, like these are the negative impacts of being a shithead of a parent. It doesn't matter what words you use for like the business side of things, like the audience knows this guy was not very good at being a parent.
All right, so I presume that we will get a CEO named in the next episode. I have just handed you a cool $50 bill, and you've walked up to the counter in Vegas, and you have to put your cool $50 bill on one of the characters in the show. Do you go with Greg or Tom or one of the siblings? Do you go with Frank or Carl or Jerry? Who, Abe, gets the cool $50 bill?
Easiest bet since the last bet I lost, Kendall. would be
Putting your 50 on Kindle.
Yes.
All right. Lori, I've handed you $50. Who you put your money on?
Oh, Frank or someone we don't like Stewie.
Frank or Stewie? Okay.
Yeah, that'd
$25 on Frank and $25 on Stewie. My 50. I'm gonna ride Greg. We're gonna see what happens with Greg the Egg. Anyway, you got anything else for us tonight, Abe?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
Braves win 4-3 against the rotten Dodgers.
Oh, nice.
Going back, like, I don't know, to 2015 or 2017 or something, the Braves are 30-50 against the Dodgers.
Wow.
I think 31-50 now with the win tonight.
Wow.
And have not won a single regular season series against them.
Wow. That is something.
Like a fucking decade.
That's a streak.
Crazy. Did you happen to see David Simon, the Wire guy, was interviewed on NPR this week? I'll read from the transcript. This is Ari Shapiro talking, my boy Ari Shapiro. So you've spent your career creating television without artificial intelligence, and I could imagine today you thinking, boy, I wish I had that tool to solve these thorny problems. David Simon, what? You imagine that? Ari Shapiro, boy, if that had existed, it would have really screwed me over. David Simon again, I don't think AI can remotely challenge what writers do at a fundamentally creative level. Ari Shapiro, but if you're trying to transition from scene 5 to scene 6 and you're stuck with that transition, you could imagine plugging that portion of the script into an AI and say, give me 10 ideas for how to transition between this and that. David Simon, I'd rather put a gun in my mouth. Ari Shapiro, you would rather put a gun in your mouth? I mean, what you're saying to me effectively is there's no original way to do anything. And Ari Shapiro, no. Yes, you are. That seems like a kind of absolutist take. Not only, I think it is a fundamental violation of the integrity of writers and also of copyright to, when I sold all the scripts I sold, 150 at HBO and maybe another 50 to NBC, I didn't sell them so that they could be thrown into a computer with other people's and be used again by some corporation. So you would never agree to a contract that saw any role for AI at all? No, I would not. Huh. If that's where this industry is going, it's going to infantilize itself. We're all going to be watching stuff we've watched before, only worse.
There is like there's this divide between the romantics and then like the normal people. Like Shapiro, what he's saying, normal. If this thing can aid in the process, why not? Less work for me. And then you have the romantics. You are among them. Oh, how dare you? This whole thing. Like, what do you mean?
You know what I would have said to Ari Shapiro if he was like, so, you get to come to loggerheads with yourself in some part of the story. You're not sure where to go next. You just fire up the AI and why wouldn't you do that? Ari, I'll bet your fucking memoir sucks ass, man. That's what you've just told me. Just by asking that question, I know for certain that your memoir is stupid and bad.
I don't know if I'm going to be putting on this headset again. I don't know if it's going to be from
cast iron brains.
I want to apologize for the people who signed my paycheck, for the people I work with, for anybody that I've offended here tonight. I can't begin to tell you how deeply sorry I am.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.